2021 at 6:30 p.m. Please join me in saluting the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For the record, show all selectmen are present. Just an adjustment to the agenda we're going to add. We're going to take off the executive session. We're going to put number 6. Reselling a cemetery lot in our bridge cemetery. All right. Let's see. Consent agenda. Warrant number 45, 7/12/2021. Number 1. Excuse me. 7/12/2021. Payroll register number 27, 7/8/2021, and number 28, 7/15/2021.
So moved as read.
We have a motion and a second to accept the warrant and payroll register as read. All those in favor? All in favor, motion carries. This time I'd like to open a public hearing to take comment on issuing a special amusement permit to the American Legion Post 39. Public hearing.
So this is a procedural thing that we have to do for every establishment that has a liquor license. If they're going to have live music, they also have to have a special amusement permit. Somerset Abbey does this every year, but establishments like the Legion don't always have music, so they are planning on an event later on this month on the 31st, and so they have submitted this request to have a special amusement permit, which requires a public hearing.
Are there any more comments on the public hearing? Any more comments? Seeing none, a public hearing will close. We will have a motion to accept the special amusement permit.
I make a motion to give the Legion the special amusement permit.
All right, we have a motion and a second to award a special amusement permit to the American Legion Post 39. Date was, doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, it'll be good for a year from today's date.
Good for a year. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Letter D, acceptance of the meeting minutes from July 12th, 2021.
Move to accept.
Second. We have a motion and a second to accept the meeting minutes of July 12th, 2021. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Old business, Mr. Moody?
None, sir.
Mr. Manza?
None.
Mr. Gopin?
None.
Mr. Doyle? Correct? None from me. Items of communication, Mr. Town Manager?
A couple things to pass along. We received a check for $4,082 from the Maine Municipal Association Workers' Comp Fund. This is our credit or our dividend for the loss prevention programs that all the department heads put in place. So really this is a hats off to Jeff and Tammy and Julie and Dawn for the work that they put in place for all the departments for loss prevention. The library has received a small grant from the ARPA or COVID funds, $3,250. This will go towards ventilation improvements and dehumidifying improvements at the library. I talked to John Harlow, who's the station director for Channel 11 here. Channel 11 and the town are going to go in on some cameras that will be placed in this building to cover the entrances and the hallways. And John will oversee that for us. And so that way we'll have eyes on all the activity in this building throughout the week. And speaking of this building, Madison Business Alliance is going to start using a room in this building so that they can have kind of a location for their activities. And that is all I have.
All right, thank you. All right, new business. Number 1, discuss policy for remote meetings.
So at the last meeting, I gave you a draft of what the state is now requiring every municipality to do if we're going to allow access for remote meetings going forward. These remote meetings where people participated by Zoom, either the elected officials participated by Zoom or the public or staff, those were all allowable under the governor's state of emergency. But the state of emergency is over. And starting in August, all elected and appointed boards that make public decisions are required to meet in person. Doesn't really impact you because this board has continued to meet in person, but if another emergency were to come and you wanted the option of meeting remotely, then you need to have a policy in place. So I guess I bring this to you tonight for really just a little bit of a talk through. Before you put it into action, it requires a public hearing. So I wanted to see if that's something the board wanted to do. If this is a policy you want to enact, then this is a draft that's you've had a chance to look at for a couple of weeks. If you don't want to enact a policy, then all your meetings will have to be in person and everybody that participates will have to be in person. There won't be an option unless you institute a policy.
You want to move forward and hope to do the public hearing in August? Or do everybody good with that? Okay.
So if you,
Any questions? Anybody have any questions? So if you, we're talking about both a person watching and a person participating.
so what they've referred to a lot of these policies as are hybrid policies, where if, for example, only 2 of you were able to meet physically and you needed a quorum, and one person had a legitimate reason why they couldn't be here in person, they could participate by Zoom and you would have a quorum and you'd be able to have your meeting. If there was another state of emergency and nobody could meet in person and everybody was going to meet by Zoom, much like the planning board has done for the last 16 months, then you just facilitate your meeting by Zoom, and as long as you have a policy in place, you could do that. People could still remote in and watch. If you have a public hearing, you can give people notice that there's a public hearing, they can participate by Zoom, so they can zoom in and give their opinions. During the last year, you've had the opportunity to hear that, both on public hearings for like a salvage yard, needle exchange programs. People were able to use Zoom and come in person in both of those. So it would just allow you to continue to be able to have that as an option if you chose.
Okay, so we'll put it on the agenda for May, for August. Sorry about that. All right, number 2, discuss matching grant applications.
So we received 7 applications for the matching grant program. The deadline was last Wednesday. You should have received the information in your packet. I'll just go down through them quickly for the public record. Corson Blaisdell's office wants to spend some money to do some roof replacements and repair. The Good and Plenty 2, which is over there on Lakewood Road, they're looking at investing in some new freezer equipment. Fonzo's is going to replace the siding on the front and sides of their building. Jeff Ireland, who owns K-Tronics, bought the old Napa store, and he's doing work there, and he's seeking some funding to replace the siding on that building. R&D Home Source out in Klaus Corner is paving their parking lot. Spinology, which is the building that the Niffins owned next to the Log Cabin Church. That's a chiropractor's office. He wants to pave that parking lot. And Boynton's Landscaping is looking for funding to purchase a new lawn aerator. So those are the grant requests that are before you. And to remind you, this is money that we earmarked from our COVID relief money that the town is giving. And one of the things that you're required to do with this COVID relief money is to offer some sort of business assistance. And so that's why we thought we'd plug this into our existing grant program.
Any of these received assistance before?
R&B has, Spinology has. That's the only 2 that have received. Now, we've been doing this since 2013. So those are the only 2 that are repeat requests.
Any questions? I mean, I'll state my concern again. With this type of program, I have no problem with the roof repairs, I have no problem with siding and paving, I have no problem with that at all. Buying pieces of equipment, I hope they're going to stay in town, because that hasn't always been our that hasn't always been our luck. So that's my only, so a new freezer and like an aerator, I mean, I think they're gonna stay in town, but that hasn't been our track record for it. Go.
Usually when you, like, freezers where you need it, things like this, that's fine. But, some pieces of equipment, that's when they should go to the loan fund. With all the money.
All right, who would like to make a motion?
Are we, got a motion to approve these?
Yes, yeah.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All right, we have a second, a motion and a second to approve Corson Blaisdell roof repair for $37.50, good and plenty, new freezer equipment for $5,000. Fonzo's replacing siding on the front and sides of the building for $5,000. K-Tronics replaced siding on new location at 88 Main Street for $5,000. R&B Home Source paving parking lot for $4,800. Spinology to pave the parking lot for $5,000, and Boynton's Landscaping and purchase equipment, a lawn aerator for $3,500, for a total of $32,050. Any questions?
I just have one.
Yes.
Do you know on Good and Plenty too, if they're gonna open that place back up again or not?
That was his intention. Alex and I talked last week, and he told me he has 6 people that are already ready to work there. He wants to pave the parking lot, but paving projects, as everybody knows, are really booked out quite a ways. But he wants to get these new freezers in this summer and get it open by, great summer.
All right, any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? 3 in favor, opposed? 1 opposed? Let's say 2 opposed. Yep, you opposed. Oh, yeah. All right, number 3, budget review, carry forward proposals.
So in your packet, you should have received the small print page that talks about what amount of money each article or each department had left over. I'll just draw your attention to the big picture first, that we underspent our budget this year for non-capital by about $174,000. And we underspent our capital by about $96,000, almost $97,000. Part of that capital is a truck that we have money set aside for that we don't have a VIN number for. It's not built yet. It's a replacement 1 ton for the 1 ton that we have with a cracked frame. And so we're going to recommend carrying forward all of our capital because the remainder of that $96,000 will be for paving projects. But more detail is in the different categories, the different departments that you see on that page. And I asked each of the department heads, Jeff and Don and Tammy and Chris LeBlanc with the Recreation and Julie at the library, to give me an idea. If you want to carry money forward that you didn't spend, then the selectmen are going to want to know what you're going to spend it on. And so if you take a look at the top of the page under Public Works, the Public Works Department has about $80,000 left in its budget, and they're proposing to carry forward $60,000 of that. They saw savings this year because it was a relatively mild winter. They're recommending to spend money on special projects, a little bit more on personnel. The building, they're asking for $30,000, and then the gravel line. So let's talk about those a little more in detail. Special projects line, that's the line that's been in place for as long as I've been here, about 5 or 6 years. That allows the road crew flexibility to do projects that come up as needed. Hayden Street is a good example of that. We did not have Hayden Street budgeted as a project, but we had money left over in our special projects line to get that done this spring rather than waiting. Personnel for highway, we talked about this before. Mr. Manters brought it up. you never know if you're gonna be able to hire people. And so, as winter help is coming, we hope the people that worked for us last year will come back and work again. If not, the road commissioner recommended we put a little bit more money away in our personnel if we need to step up to hire people for this winter. The 30,000 building line is put in there for a natural gas conversion at the highway garage. Summit's pipeline runs all the way up Madison Avenue, and the crew has done a lot of work over the past winter and spring because it was relatively mild, and they've gutted and done a lot of work to take out walls and take out stuff and get ready to take out a 1,000-gallon waste oil tank that we don't use anymore. And we've moved other equipment out of the boiler room, or we moved the compressors out of the boiler room.
No, we had to move, that was our parts room, so the insurance company suggested that we move our parts room because it's not supposed to be in the same room as the boiler room. So that is in one of our bays right now, so when we pull the oil tank out, that's gonna be our new parts room for storage of our chainsaws and parts and things.
So, before the end of the last fiscal year, Jeff got some quotes on what it would take to convert that system up there over to a natural gas system. And the quotes ran anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000. Of course, if we move forward with this and we have the money for it, he'll go out and actually get bids on that project. And we think it could be a long-term savings for the town. And the gravel line, we always try to recommend more money to the gravel line because you always need it. So, any questions on the public works carry forward? What we've traditionally done in the past is we run through these non-capitals. If the board is willing to make a motion as presented, we can do that.
All right, so we're looking for a motion for Public Works for $60,000 to be carried forward.
So moved on $60,000 for public works.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second to carry forward $60,000 from Public Works. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries.
So the next article is the fire department. They've got about $9,900, just under $10,000 left at unspent. We're recommending spending that $2,500 in maintenance, $2,500 in equipment upgrades, and $3,500 just because that building over in East Madison, where Company 2 is getting old, and they did about $1,500 to $2,000 worth of repairs just this past year, but there's more work that needs to be done. Some of the bay doors need some work, some of the regular doors and windows need some replacement. So Donnie is always recommending that we put a little money away to that building in East Madison rather than just, getting hit with a big bill. So the recommendation is $8,500 for the fire department.
Looking for a motion?
So moved, $8,500 for the fire department. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to carry forward $8,500 for the fire department. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. General government.
So this is essentially in the administration part of the budget. We're recommending $2,500. Part of that's going to go towards air conditioning replacements. Obviously, that's not enough to do everything. We were talking outside the meeting about things like in-room air conditioners for this building down here, heat pumps, all those we're looking at. We're looking at a combination of using some COVID money that's available and some carry-forward money. General code book, we did a pretty extensive shoreline zoning update. Those usually run about $3,000 or $4,000, so we're recommending putting another $1,000 into that. And the last two, $2,500 and $5,000, are both related to equipment and software upgrades for our computer systems. It's something that you just can't stay ahead of. So the total amount there is, the surplus was $19,008, the recommended carry forward is $11,000.
So moved on the 11,000 for general government. Carry forward. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to carry forward $11,000 in general government. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Library, $10,000 for building repair and maintenance.
Yeah, they had a surplus of about 10,400, and Julie's requesting to use most of that because as they are doing their roof project, other things are being unearthed because you have, like, you're taking a roof off a 100-year-old building. So it's an octagon, so there's 8 100-year-old windows up at the top. And the roofers identified one of them as getting ready to fall out because the sill is rotted away. We had a local contractor go up and take a look at it, and he said, no, this is not me. You need somebody that specializes in historical buildings. So Julie has found someone that will repair the window, but we got to get it out. And so at this point, what Julie has decided to do, and their trustees, is to finish the roof project, board up that window with some plywood for the winter, and then get some quotes and get an idea of what they can do to replace all 8 windows, or at least get them out, redo the sills, and put them all back in. So she's recommending carrying forward money for that project.
Move $10,000 surplus for carry forward for the library.
All right.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to move $10,000 in building repairs and maintenance for the library. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Excuse me, recreation, $13,000.
I'll make sure that the librarian knows Mr. Mancher made that motion.
Thank you.
Yes, for recreation, they had quite a bit left over because there were several programs they didn't do last year due to COVID. So they have a list of things here. The lion's share of it is upgrades to the ball fields. There's a couple of ball fields that have been hit hard by grubs. Most of the edge of the infield out to the outfield is dead, so that needs quite a bit of attention. So that's what they're recommending, a total of $13,000 out of their $16,000 surplus.
I'll move 13,000 carry forward for recreation.
I'll second.
All right, motion and a second to carry forward $13,000 for recreation, Article 10. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries.
So the last category is capital, and traditionally we carry capital forward because it allows us more flexibility with equipment purchases, like a new one-ton truck, and other paving projects that maybe didn't get done in the last fiscal year. So the total amount there is $96,197.32.
Looking for a motion?
So moved on the capital, 96,197.32. Second.
All right, a motion and a second to carry forward $96,179.32. $97.32 in capital. Any questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. So we're done carrying forward.
Yep.
All right, discuss, number 4, discuss overdraft of Article 8, 2020 town meeting warrant.
So one of the areas that we didn't do so well in was public utilities, which are the storm drains, streetlights, hydrants, and municipal solid waste. I just want to remind folks, and just for the public record, that town meeting authorizes the select board to move up to $25,000 from the general fund. If we didn't have this article in town meeting that was approved, we would have to take this back to a special town meeting to get this overdraft taken care of. But the overdraft came because we had extra expenses in streetlights. We ran over our streetlight budget by about $4,000. We had extra expenses in municipal solid waste over at our fees over at Waste Management. We overran that by about $30,000, but some of the others were underspent, so we had a net overage of $24,672.73. So if the board is willing, we would need a motion to authorize a transfer from the general fund to cover that overdraft amount.
So moved as read. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to move to Article 8 from the general fund, $24,672.73. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, motion carries. All right, number 5, set interest rate for revolving loan program.
So according to our policies for revolving loans, the select board sets the interest rate each year, effective July 1st. We have not done much activity out of the revolving loan account. Currently, the rate is set at 6%, and currently we have approximately $14,000 to loan. For those of you who may not have been on the board last year, we cashed out the grant that we got from USDA. That was a $50,000 grant. We got several years ago, back in 2006, 2007. We ended that program and returned to USDA $42,000. So it was a grant with strings attached, and so we decided to cut all the strings and give them their money back. So that left us with a balance of about $14,000 to spend, or to loan.
So the only thing we're doing here is setting the interest rate.
That is
It hasn't
correct.
been set currently, or last year was that, well, I guess it was 2019, it was 6%.
6%. I couldn't find any documentation that we changed it from 6%, so I think that's where it was last 2 years.
Any motion?
I'll move we set it at 6% as previously done.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to set the revolving loan interest rate at 6%. Mr. Gopi.
Well, this is where I think some of these jobs that they're doing around their stores and everything are great. But this is also this should be thought about also as some things that can be bought at their expense instead of giving them half off. Like any type of, the freezer, for example. I mean, you can split that with them. You know, they owe this $15,000, they can pay it all back. But with a 6% interest loan, why are you gonna come here? I mean, it's supposed to be to help new businesses out. And if you look at this thing, new businesses are these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You've got, what, half of them are brand new businesses. And they're looking for places to get money. And this would be a nice place for them to help them out and get going and everything. And they have 5 years to pay it back. And if you don't like to you gotta get the interest rate down so people come and borrow it. That's the idea of doing it, helping out new businesses. And some of these freezers I know are very expensive, and a lot of things you buy on a business is very expensive. And I think this is just a cheap way to help them get going.
Any of, Mr. Roy?
If you go to the bank, what is an interest rate compared to the 6%? I agree with Paul, that why have this set aside if nobody's gonna borrow against us? 2019, how many people's borrowed against it?
Go to the bank right now, I'm not sure, I've been out for about 3 years, but unsecured credit would probably cost you, I would say, 15%, so it's pretty high.
Pretty high.
I mean, this is a very fair rate.
I didn't cost you. What would be the cost?
15%.
It's like 15 for unsecured credit, you know, if it's a short term. It's probably lower now because things have changed since I retired, but it's a high interest rate usually.
The only thing that I had ever thought of this was that it's a bridge from the bank if somebody doesn't have enough money to do it. And the problem is that we're not going to be the first one on the hook here. Right? We're going to be probably the last one, and if things go bad, we're not going to get anything back. So I think you got to have some sort of interest rate that's going to protect that a little bit.
You can change some of these guidelines you have here. I mean, you've got 5 years. And just change it, say they have to be in business for 3 years before they can borrow money. You know, something along that, so they've proven that they're gonna hang around for a few years. You know, you can add other things to it.
Right, if somebody's going out of business or somebody is and doesn't have the cash to pay, it doesn't matter how long they're in business. Right, it doesn't matter.
Well, the thing is, if I'm going out of business, am I gonna borrow 15,000? Everybody in town will know you're going out of business.
Hold on.
So if I could just add some perspective on this. Somerset County Economic Development, which is an arm of the county commissioners, they have a revolving loan program. They probably have about $1 million out there in Somerset County. In Kennebec Valley Council of Governments, they've got about $3 million out there in loans in Kennebec, Somerset County to businesses. Sally and I are on the revolving loan committee for Kennebec Valley Council of Governments. And it's getting better now, but there was a point not too long ago that they were probably defaulting on about 25% of those loans. So there was quite a few people that got loans from Kennebec Valley Council of Governments that did go out of business and never opened their business. So I think they've tightened up some of their parameters now so that they're not, so free in giving out that money. But I've never looked at the town as trying to compete for that business, because Somerset Economic Development has, $1 million to loan. Kennebec Valley Council of Governments just got $670,000 in COVID money that they've got to get out the door by the end of this calendar year. So if people need money, they can go to these places. And these interest rates between Somerset and Kennebec County are 6 to 10%. So those are the gap findings. I just don't think we have enough stake to be in this loan game. With right now with 14,000 to lend, and let's say that we have two outstanding loans right now. One's the Go Labs for $400,000. 300 of that was a grant. 400,000, 300,000 was granted to us to give to them, or loan to them. And then we have Emerson's store there on Maple Street, and she's got a balance due of about $21,000. So if both those loans get paid off, now the town has $400,000 plus to work with to loan. I don't see us being an advantage to anybody with so little to loan right now.
Then why do you have this program?
Because you don't want to get rid of it, because if the money does come back and all of a sudden you find yourself with $400,000 that you can loan out, you've got a program you can use.
Now you're talking about 15,000 here. You can't, I'm still don't understand how gold I've ever got all this money from the town. Because it says here, you're only supposed to loan out 15,000. Just like in the past, some people other than who skated through didn't pay back, theirs was well above 15,000. I mean, this program is just for a small amount of money.
Right.
And we're talking, you're absolutely right. If you get that, if you get money back and you put something, if you get some COVID money you can put in here, that'd be great. And things like that to help out the businesses. You give them the 50% loan, which is great, and they're getting a lot of work done for that 32,000, you get 82,000 back in return, and they're doing a lot of good, making all the stores look better, which is great. And that, I think that's commendable, and that's why you got that sign, wherever it says.
Business friendly
Oh,
designation.
that's right.
If we want to make some changes to this, we can put that on a future agenda and do that. If you want to change going for 3 years to 6 years or 5 years, we can do that at that time.
Right.
Wouldn't be a bad idea.
As long as you keep a small amount, I mean, it's really not gonna hurt you. And that's the idea, and that's what, change it down to 10,000. I mean, just make it a small amount.
That's something we can talk about at another meeting, we can bring it, so let's put that on the agenda for, it doesn't have to be August, but it can be September. All right, so our question right now is to set the revolving loan fund interest rate at 6%. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? 4 in favor, opposed? We have 1 opposed. All right, number 6, to discuss Briggs Cemetery lot.
So Tammy Carey has been working with some folks that had put in a request essentially to purchase a lot in the Bridge Cemetery. The Bridge Cemetery is closed, in other words, the town is not selling lots in that. And so in order to make that decision, it's up to you as a select board as to whether or not you want to open Bridge Cemetery for sales.
And the Bridge Cemetery is located,
That's the one behind Big Apple.
We haven't had sales in there for how long?
So at least Dana closed it in '02, '04, so it's been a while.
And- All right, any other questions?
and
Should go.
while we opening it,
What's that? Just-
Why are we
We
doing
have a request for somebody. that
We have a
wants to
request
buy
that
it.
he'd like to be buried close to his family. He's not a resident.
All right, questions? Any motion?
wait, is this, is it where they're gonna be buried, is it close to their family or something?
Yes, it'd be close to their family. There would be 2 cremations going in there. And that's about it.
Oh, there are a lot of lots available in there.
At the Bridge Cemetery, we'd have to have Mike Ricker go through to see what's available for lots. Currently, we have the East Madison Dam Cemetery that's open for sales, and we have the Forest Hill Cemetery is open for sales.
I would say we go. Forest Hills is open, I'd say let's let them have buy a place in there. Any motion? Any? We good?
So you,
Mr. Go.
I have one, this is like their parents or something, how come they don't, what's, why don't we just take and give them a lot, and don't even open it? We have one lot in there, right by their parents?
I'd have to go with Mike Ricker to verify that.
Okay.
If there's a lot. It's up to the board if you want to,
so according to this town ordinance, the
Yeah.
board is the one that controls the cemeteries and the sale of lots and the opening and closing of cemeteries. So if you wanted to do what Mr. Gopian suggested, you would technically have to make a motion to allow that to happen in the Bridge Cemetery.
Anybody? No?
Wait, I'll make a motion, we, let them get a lot.
Buy you.
Buy a lot in the cemetery, that means you're gonna have to open it up, right? If you give them a lot, do you have to open it up?
Either way, you have to have a record of it.
yeah.
Would you open up a can of worms if you give it away?
Okay.
All right,
Well,
we have a motion. Second? Lack of a second.
I think the last burial was 1966.
What's that?
I think the last burial in that cemetery was 66, maybe not, I'm not sure.
All right, we'll move on.
So just for the record, Mr. Gopian made a motion
Wait a second.
and it failed for lack of a second.
All right.
Okay.
Well, I would say that means that cemetery that's open are available.
Right.
Cemeteries that are open are
And
available.
those 2 are East Madison Dam and
Forest Hill. Yep.
All right, select board concern. Mr. Moody?
None, sir.
Mr. Mantor?
None, sir.
None.
What is that? None? Okay, citizens' concerns. Mr. Gray?
I have a couple. I live on East Madison Road, and we had new people purchase the trailer next to me. Now, I know in town that we make people maintain their property, keep their grass down. I've got 7 feet of grass next door to my property. I just want to know why out of town is looked upon differently than in town when I pay taxes, the same as people in town. Why can't I make them maintain their land? We do it in town. It's not funny.
No, I didn't say it was funny, I didn't say, I don't want 7 feet next to mine, mine's about 7 right now, but I gotta get out and mow it. Skirts, same thing, I know in the past, dealing with out of town has not been popular. Dealing
It shouldn't
with,
be any different. We're all in Madison, we all pay taxes, we all have the same thing. There should be no difference. That trailer next to me should be maintained just like anybody in town. If that was in town, you would make them maintain that. It's not right.
Tim, do we have any policies governing this?
We do have a property maintenance ordinance. It doesn't speak specifically to the height of grass, but for an example, the one in town, right next to the playground, if anybody noticed that this year, that grass got really high. And so we had to take some steps, actually had to do a wellness check from the sheriff's office to make sure that people were okay in the house. And then we eventually got that one taken care of. The property that Mr. Gray is referring to has been vacant for a while, and
No.
was most recently sold.
Never vacant. Never vacant.
My mistake, my
Yeah.
understanding it was vacant for a while,
Never.
but
She moved out, they moved in.
so
Always in there.
most recently it's been sold, and so there's new owners there. I have been in contact with the new owners about a couple of things, not necessarily the maintenance of the property, but they've expressed to me that they are moving from a place where their house was burnt, and so they're in the transition of setting up at this new property. And I don't go looking for property maintenance issues. If I see one, I'll try to make note of it, but generally it is a response to a concern that's expressed by a resident. Tonight is the first time I'm hearing about property maintenance at this place from Mr. Gray, so I'll be glad to look into it and try to enforce the ordinances that are in place. But unless somebody makes me aware of one, I don't go looking for it.
Now my second.
is that okay? Are you happy with him going after that right now?
Yeah, yes.
All right.
So what you're saying is we do have a policy that can be enforced to affect this.
Well, we have a policy that can be enforced to a degree. And there are specifics mentioned in the policy about types of trash, garbage, debris, old broken down cars, unregistered vehicles, and there's a longer list than that. Height of grass is not specific in it, but there's, different people are going to have different opinions on what looks good. So normally what I do is I'll go over and I'll inspect the property and I'll note the violations that are clear. Obviously, I'll take a picture. These bags of garbage need to go. This lumber that's stacked up here that's all falling apart needs to be neatly stacked and covered. Those are the clear things from the ordinance. And you issue that warning to an individual that they're in violation. They have 30 days to respond. If they don't respond, then usually I try to make sure that I'm in some sort of dialogue with them and keep track of the progress. We had an issue on Park Street this year where a neighbor was constantly contacting me about the state of the condition of the place next door. And it took most of the spring and well into the summer before we were able to reach an agreement on what they would consider to be acceptable and what this person was able to do to get it done. So it's not cut and dry, but we can certainly try to enforce anything that's a violation.
Now I'd like to talk about gray water. July 5th, I contacted Tim about, I've spent thousands of dollars on this piece of property I have out back. I had bush hog, hired a contractor to come in and remove the rocks, hired a contractor to come in and chip the stumps, had the boom hauled in, graded, grass, thousands and thousands of dollars I've spent to make my property look nice. Well, during the course of my last mowing in July 6th or 7th, when I contacted Tim, I noticed that I had silt and a path coming from that trailer next door. So I contacted my brother, Randy Gray, who was a code enforcement officer 40 years in Skowhegan. He came and took a look at it. It says clearly coming from that trail. You can see it, you don't even have to get close to it. You can see the line, you can see the green, you can see the gray water running. And it's in this wintertime, it's horrible. We had puddles down there. So on July 8th, I contacted them. They came out, code enforcement officer. Tells me, well, yeah, I can clearly see it's coming from the road, clearly. From that point on, you should have gave them a 10-day notice. I'm just a high school student. It took me 20 minutes today to figure out that law. It's a law that says if you believe they've got gray water coming their way and they do not comply with allowing you to look, you can actually give them a 10-day notice. I sent that to you tonight. My research. The code enforcement officer didn't know, which I'm shocked that we pay this guy if he didn't know that. So, then you sent me an email today saying you're gonna give them 60 days. I'm infuriated over that. If that was running on your land, your land, your land, your land, it would be done. And then you tell me, dig a hole in my lawn, dig a trench, dig it up. I've got thousands of dollars. Why do I have to dig it up and you want to give them 60 days and let their gray water run that way? You're 100% wrong in this, 100%. You sit there and nod your head. I've been asking you for a month, since July, to get on top of this. I'm at my wit's end with this. I'm at my wit's end. You know you're wrong and you want to give them more time. I don't think you have the right to do that. The state doesn't say you have the right. It says you're in violation of the state law. I want to know how come they get 60 more days and you granted that. And why do you want me to dig up my land? When you were out there saying you could see the trench. You could see it. But you want me to dig up my land? And you want to give them? They moved in July, the end of June. She moved out, they moved in, 2 days later. That place was never empty. And I disagree with everything that you said in that evening. Everything. I want to go on record that you agreed to them to 60 days, and then you tell me on the phone tonight, you're harassing them. How am I harassing them? Because I don't want their gray water running on my land? How is that harassment?
So what have we got? We've given them notice already?
No.
No.
It's giving them another 60 days.
Like, okay, so what is our, to stop this, what do we have to do?
So, let me back up to the first time that we talked about this and we went out to your property. I did take a code enforcement officer with me, Dave Savage. I did not take the town's code enforcement officer with me, which is Leo Mayo. And I think the board understands the reasons that I did that, but if not, I'll explain for everybody. We have worked without a code officer for 2 years. Leo Mayo covers us. I try to take as much off of Leo's plate as I can. So property maintenance issues, things like this, I'm going to try to investigate, and Dave Savage has offered to help me on occasion. He's not operating as the code officer for Madison, but he's familiar with the code. He's familiar with this more so than I am. My priority for Leo is to sign permits and keep building projects going. That is what my priority for Leo is. If I can assist with other property maintenance things and get those done, I'll do them. So Dave Savage and I went out there, and you're right, Sam, it is clear as day that there is a line across your property. And if you look at it, there's a little bit of a silty type material that's come up. And your brother, Randy, would indicate that, yeah, that looks like it was a gray water line at some point, or a gray water trench. Gray water is the stuff that comes from your sink and your shower and your dishwasher. It's not sewage. But it still needs to be treated, and you can't have it run from one property to the other. What was clear to Dave Savage and I, that if you followed that little trench, you could see where it ended at their property, right at the property line. There's no way to indicate from where you were standing if that line went all the way and was an active line to their trailer. So to determine that, we would have to get their permission to go on their property to see if there really was a gray water line from underneath the trailer running all the way to Sam's property. So first thing I did was I sent a courtesy letter and copied Sam on it to the owners of the property. And so in that courtesy letter, we covered a lot of different things because there was a couple things going on. One, was issues with their property taxes and homestead exemptions. They would have had 2 homestead exemptions, and I wanted to make sure that they knew they weren't gonna have 2. There was an issue with farm animals. I had to clarify where they could, use their farm animals and where they couldn't. And the other thing was the complaint that we received about the gray water that may be running from their property to another one. So I did that to get their attention. It worked. The property owner called me back probably 2 or 3 days later, and I explained to her the situation. Probably the next day, Sam came into my office and asked to speak to me and said that he had been on the phone with a gentleman named Brent Lawson, who was a state plumbing inspector. And Brent Lawson had told him that the state needs to go in there and inspect that to make sure it's not gray water running from one property to another, which is a violation of a DEP rule. So he gave me Brent Lawson's number. I called Brent and we discussed the situation. And Brent said, do 2 things. Find out what their septic plan is. In our map and lots at the town office, you should be able to see what was the septic plan for this property, see if it mentions gray water. So I did. There's no mention of it, but that doesn't mean it's not there. But we do have a septic plan for that property. The other thing Brent Lawson said was, make this as simple as possible. Ask her, the property owner, if we can go lift up the skirting on the mobile home. You and I go there together, and we'll look to see if there's a gray water line coming out of it. So that's what I told Sam. That was the result of that conversation with Brent Lawson. And so then I reached out to the property owner. And that was probably Wednesday of last week. So Wednesday of last week, I talked to the property owner. She said, we're in transition. She did give some excuses. Let me talk to my husband. I'm not sure whether we want you on our property or not. Let me talk to my husband and I'll get back to you. And so she told me she'd get back to me by the first of the week. So today, I got an email from her that basically says, we request 60 days. We want to get transitioned from our burned out house into this house, and we want to seek legal counsel. So, just to correct something that I don't think I said in the phone conversation today, Sam, I said they told me they feel like they're being harassed. That's what I told you. I didn't tell you that you're harassing them. But I'm expressing what they've told me. They feel like they're being harassed. They expressed that to me. I said that's not an issue I'm dealing with. I'm only just dealing with the gray water issue. So after you and I talked today, let me just point out here, at no time during these last 3 weeks has the town or the state issued a notice of violation to them, because we have not gotten permission to go on their property yet. She asked me for 60 days. I called up Brent Lawson and I said, what do you think about this request for 60 days? He said that sounds reasonable to him because he thinks it would take a long time to get a judge's order, which is what you need. If they're not willing to let you on the property, you need to have a judge's order to get on the property. So I emailed her back saying, I talked to Brent Lawson. We've agreed to let this go 60 days. We'll follow it back up at the end of September. I emailed Sam and let him know that was my decision, and obviously he disagrees with that decision. After the last conversation I had with Sam today, and I did see your emails, although I haven't looked at them closely, I went back and I talked with Dave Savage again. Now Dave, as you know, because he was a select board member here just a few months ago, Dave's a certified code officer in Oakland, and he's served as a police officer in Oakland and in Madison. He said, really what you need is you need an administrative warrant. He says it's like a search warrant, but it's not criminal. It's an administrative warrant that allows you, and the plumbing inspector, like Brent Lawson, to go on the property and investigate this gray water thing. Dave said it's not hard to get one, but just like a search warrant, you've got to have enough evidence to justify getting this judge's order to get on someone else's property. So Dave Savage and Brent Lawson, the state licensed plumbing inspector, both said Sam needs to do more digging. He needs to look for a pipe. If he has a pipe on his property that can be tied to their property, That's the evidence that will get you an administrative warrant. In Dave Savage's opinion and Brett Lawson's opinion, the trench that you have there now is not enough evidence to get an administrative warrant. That's what I'm going.
You can go to the, you can file a civil action with a judge and go in there and look. If
You can file a civil action.
you can, town, municipality. It's right in that email I sent you tonight, right there.
I'm just going by what 2 licensed plumbing inspectors are telling me.
I'm telling you what your guy you're just referring to, come out there and said, oh yeah, that's running from their trailer. That's what he said. Now, you're gonna deny that?
I'll not deny it's coming from their property.
Okay, then let's get something going. And like I said, start the process now. Don't give them another 60 days, because then what are you gonna do then? After that 60 days, then it's gonna take another 60 days. Now we're 120 days. Now we're in the winter time.
So are you gonna be able to produce evidence of a pipe in the ground on your
I
property?
I can tell you that what's in my lawn is wet, and it never dries up. I can tell you that my dogs, my wife, and I spend thousands of dollars in that back field. And every time during the winter time, I have a water shedding down there. I can say that, but I'll dig up my lawn so you can give them another 60 days. I don't know why you want to, it feels like I'm the bloody chicken here because I don't want their gray water in my land. When I bought my house in 1999, Bob Dunphy made me dig up my pipe in my lawn because that's where he had it running, the gray water, right in the middle of the field. Odie did that. Odie built that house. He stuck that pipe right in the middle of the field, and Bob Dunphy made me remove that tank, cut that pipe out, fill that hole, and hire a plumber and give him a diagram on how that was going to be done. 1999, I couldn't buy that house until that happened. 2021, and you're telling me to dig because you don't want to help me out. Pretty sad.
I don't have a problem pursuing an administrative warrant. But if we do it without evidence of a pipe, and if you want to sign an affidavit saying everything you just said about the water and all that, we'll present all that to a judge. And let the judge make the decision on whether or not they give that administrative warrant. I have no problem doing that. And I'll work on that starting tomorrow.
There's laws. I don't understand why they're above the laws. When the code enforcement that you brought out here said it's coming from their land. I know nothing. I know nothing. I just know it's wet.
All right, so we've got a plan to move forward then.
What's the plan now?
Randy's gonna get that stuff together and present it for an administrative warrant.
Is this also a DEP violation?
It's a DEP rule, and that's what Brent Lawson.
Do they carry any teeth in this situation?
DEP certainly does, yeah. But at this stage, we don't have permission to go on this person's property that absolutely verified there's a gray water pipe that hasn't been capped, that's running from their trailer to his
How
home.
long have these people been there?
The trailer's been there. Odie,
No, the people that are living there right now, Sam.
they moved there, June maybe.
Now, was this happening with prior residents,
It's,
people?
it was. But what happened was, because it was so dry this year, that silt came out of the ground. That's how I was mowing the lawn. I was having, Erickson, stump removal guy come out there, and I was marking the stumps, and my wife started pulling up this gray silk. And so we started pulling it. And so I said, I'm gonna stop right here. I called my brother, he came up, he said, Sammy, don't do a thing, go to your town. He said, that's coming from their trailer. He said, whether it's just a line out in their field or a tank out in their field, it's making its way here. If they're gonna have to come up with a plumbing, they're gonna have to come up with a permit to dig that up, dig the tank up, dig the pipe up, have a plumber come out there and submit that. And if they don't, he says, then you can put a warrant on them. He said, in 10 days, he said, them failure to not allow you is a violation.
These people do not seem to be too cooperative, Tim?
They seem to be very, very cautious about this, and I'm not quite sure how to take them. But the advice that Sam is relaying from his brother Randy, who was a fantastic code officer for years, doesn't match up with what Brett Lawson, the state plumbing inspector, is telling me. He
I
says,
talked to Brett, what are you lining up?
he says we have to get permission to go on their property.
And if they don't, then you can file a judge's complaint against them, and it's considered a failed system.
That's the thing that he told
It's in
me
the
today.
email, it's in the email.
The connection about considering it a failed system,
It's
it's
in the
not,
email.
it's
I
not
sent
that
you.
easy to make. Okay. But
So we have-
what I'm gonna pursue is this administrative warrant that I've been told by 2 plumbing inspectors to do.
All right, we like to do it in the minimal amount of time.
Certainly.
I mean, that's all, I mean, that's all we can do. That, I mean, minimal amount of time, I mean,
What's the minimal amount of time?
I don't have an answer to that, I've never done it before.
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible. Tomorrow, a month, 60 days?
I don't know what his schedule is. So,
Hold on, 60 days.
I just want a time. I mean, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I just want a time. If it's a gray water, I want to stop. If it's not, that's okay. But I want my land to dry up. I spent thousands of dollars on that out there. And now you're telling me I gotta start digging it up.
what I've told you, and what the other code officers have said, is dig in an area, you don't have to dig it all up, but dig in an area where you think you can find a pipe if there's one there. The evidence of the pipe will go a long way in getting this administrative warrant.
I'm just telling you how he did it. He, on my land, out back here, out back of my house, when I bought that house, that ran from here to just down here. And then he stuck a tank in the ground, and then the water ran out of the main. Bob Dunn did one thing like that. That's all he did, and I know as well as my name is Stan Wright, that that's what he did over there. He ran a pipe out of the trailer, buried a tank, and the water's running from there into my property. So I'll look for a pipe, but I still know deep down that that's coming from their trailer.
The other thing I'll need is because we have to file an affidavit. And I can relay some of this information, but if you want to sign an affidavit saying
sign it.
just what you said,
Yeah.
that will help us get this administrative warrant.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'll start working on that tomorrow.
All right, thank you, Sam. Any other citizens' concerns? I'm seeing none, looking for motion to adjourn. We have a motion and a second to adjourn, all those in favor? All in favor? Motion carries. 7:32.